Welcome to her everyday drama stories. Subscribe for stories of growth, resilience, and new beginnings. Chapter 1. Elena Cross knew her marriage was over when she saw her husband folding his navy suits with more care than he had touched her in months. Marcus stood beside an open suitcase in the bedroom they had shared for 11 years. His cufflinks lay in a velvet box. His passport rested on top of a stack of shirts. On the dresser, his phone kept lighting up with messages from a woman saved under the harmless name CR. Each message made the corner of his mouth lift. He did not look guilty. That was what hurt most. "I was going to tell you after the board meeting," he said. "But Celeste thinks dragging this out is cruel." Elena stayed near the doorway, one hand still wrapped around the grocery bag she had carried upstairs. A bottle of wine pressed against her wrist. It was the same vintage they had served at their wedding. "Celeste?" she repeated. Marcus exhaled as if she were making an easy conversation difficult. "Celeste Rowan. You met her at the winter benefit." Elena remembered a woman in silver silk laughing too loudly at Marcus's jokes. She also remembered the wedding ring on Celeste's hand, a square emerald surrounded by diamonds. "She's married, separated," Marcus corrected, "emotionally for years. Her husband only cares about acquisitions and headlines. She understands what it's like to be invisible beside someone successful." The absurdity almost made Elena laugh. Marcus was chief executive of Cross Hospitality because Elena had built the forecasting system that turned 3 struggling hotels into a national management company. Yet he had spent years introducing her as the quiet wife who preferred staying behind the scenes. Now he was explaining invisibility to her. "And what do you want?" she asked. "A life that doesn't feel like an audit." He zipped the suitcase. "Celeste makes me feel alive." The doorbell rang before Elena could answer. Marcus frowned. "Are you expecting someone?" "No." A moment later, the housekeeper appeared at the bedroom door. Her face was pale. "Mrs. Cross, there is a Mr. Rowan downstairs." Marcus went still. Elena set the grocery bag on a chair. "Show him in." Julian Rowan did not need an introduction. His photograph appeared in financial magazines whenever Rowan Global bought another logistics company, hospital network, or chain of luxury resorts. He was 42, 6 years older than Elena, with dark hair touched by silver at the temples, and a reputation for noticing the weakness in a company before its own directors did. He entered the bedroom without hurry. His charcoal coat was damp from the rain, and his expression held none of the rage Elena expected from a betrayed husband. He looked at Marcus's suitcase, then at Elena. "Mrs. Cross," he said, "I'm sorry we are meeting this way." Marcus recovered first. "This is private. It stopped being private when you charged a suite in Paris to one of my subsidiaries." Julian's voice remained level. "Celeste used my aircraft account to book the return flight. Neither of you is as discreet as you imagine." Elena looked at Marcus. "Paris? You told me you were negotiating the Marseille contract." "I was. Celeste joined me afterward." Julian took a slim envelope from inside his coat and placed it on the dresser. Photographs, travel records, as an expense statements slid partly into view. "There are copies for you," he told Elena. "My attorney advised me to document everything before Celeste could move marital assets. I saw your husband's name and believed you deserved the same warning." Marcus stepped toward him. "You don't get to come into my house and threaten us." "Your house?" Elena asked softly. Marcus turned. The house had belonged to Elena's grandmother. Elena had mortgaged it to save Marcus's first hotel after a disastrous expansion. She had paid the loan from royalties on software Marcus still called a company asset. For the first time that evening, uncertainty crossed his face. Elena opened the envelope. The first photograph showed Marcus kissing Celeste beside a private terminal. The date in the corner was 8 months earlier, the night he had missed Elena's birthday because of an alleged mechanical delay. She did not tear the photograph. She did not slap him. She simply placed it back with the others. "Take the suitcase," she said. "Leave the key." Marcus stared at her. "That's it?" 11 years and that's all you have to say? You made your decision before tonight. I am only accepting it faster than you expected. His pride needed a scene. Elena could see it in the flare of his nostrils, and the way his fingers tightened around the suitcase handle. He wanted tears he could describe to Celeste later. He wanted proof that two women were fighting over him. Elena gave him nothing. When Marcus passed Julian, he stopped. She'll never love you, he said. Celeste loves freedom. Julian glanced at Elena rather than Marcus. That is no longer the question that concerns me. After Marcus left, the house seemed to release a breath. Rain tapped against the windows. Elena stared at the empty space where the suitcase had been. There is more, Julian said. She looked at him. Celeste did not only spend money, she accessed confidential files from my home office. Several concerned cross-hospitality. The cold in Elena's chest sharpened into attention. What kind of files? A proposed acquisition. Your husband has been trying to sell cross-hospitality to Rowan Global for 6 months. He represented that he owned the predictive system your company uses. My technical team believes that representation may be false. Elena's face did not change, but her hand closed around the envelope. She had written the first version of that system at her grandmother's kitchen table. The patent application bore her maiden name. Marcus knew it. He had asked her to delay licensing negotiations until after the acquisition, claiming it would simplify taxes. When is the board meeting? She asked. Tomorrow at 10. Then Marcus did not leave tonight because Celeste thought honesty was kind. He left because he believed the sale would make him rich enough to survive a divorce. Julian's eyes held hers. There was respect in them, not pity. That is also my conclusion. Elena lifted the untouched wine from the grocery bag and placed it in the cabinet. Mr. Rowan, would you like coffee? We appear to have a transaction to stop. For the first time, something warm moved through Julian's controlled expression. Yes, he said, but call me Julian. Chapter 2. At 9 the next morning, Elena walked into Cross Hospitality headquarters wearing an ivory suit and the pearl earrings her mother had given her before she died. The lobby receptionist looked at her with startled sympathy. Marcus had moved fast. By sunrise, half the executive floor knew he had left his wife for Celeste Rowan. Elena signed the visitor log. Mrs. Cross, the receptionist whispered, your access card was deactivated. I expected that. The elevator doors opened behind her. Julian stepped out with 2 attorneys and a woman carrying a locked evidence case. Every conversation in the lobby stopped. Marcus's assistant hurried forward. Mr. Rowan, the board is waiting upstairs. Mr. Cross asked that Mrs. Cross not attend. Julian glanced at Elena. The owner of the intellectual property being sold is attending. They rode to the 34th floor in silence. Elena could feel the staff watching through glass office walls. She had spent 12 years, teaching many of them how to read demand models, negotiate vendor terms, and rescue underperforming properties. Marcus had accepted the applause. Elena had accepted the work. That morning, she stopped accepting the arrangement. Inside the boardroom, Marcus sat at the head of the table. Celeste occupied the chair beside him, dressed in red and wearing the emerald ring Julian had given her 7 years earlier. She smiled when Elena entered. I didn't realize spouses were invited, Celeste said. Julian took the seat opposite her. Apparently, they are. The color left Celeste's face. Marcus rose. Elena has no operational role here. That is an interesting claim, said Julian's lead attorney, Naomi. She placed a folder before each director, especially because the acquisition agreement lists the cross-meridian forecasting platform as the company's primary proprietary asset. Elena remained standing. Cross-Meridian is not owned by Cross Hospitality. It is licensed under a renewable agreement from Meridian Logic, an entity I formed before Marcus and I married. The license prohibits transfer during a change of control without my written consent. The chief financial officer flipped through the folder. Marcus, you told us the license had been assigned permanently. It was supposed to be, Marcus said. Elena signed the paperwork. I signed a draft acknowledgement permitting due diligence, Elena replied. The final assignment has my name typed at the bottom, but the electronic certificate is not mine. Julian's technical investigator opened the evidence case and removed a tablet. The certificate was generated from Mr. Cross's executive laptop at 2:13 a.m. 3 weeks ago. We preserved the metadata last night because the same file appeared in materials sent to Rowan Global. Marcus's jaw tightened. This is a misunderstanding. Elena gave me authority to handle company documents, not authority to forge my signature. Celeste leaned back as if the matter bored her. This sounds like bitterness dressed as paperwork. Marcus built this company. Elena wrote a useful little program years ago, and now wants to punish him for finding happiness. Elena looked directly at her. You downloaded that useful little program from Julian's acquisition portal on 4 separate nights. You then sent portions of the source documentation to a venture fund in Singapore. Celeste's smile vanished. Julian folded his hands on the table. The venture fund is controlled by your cousin. Did you imagine my security team would not follow the transfer? Marcus turned to Celeste. You said you were arranging bridge financing. I was protecting us by selling files you did not own. Do not become righteous now, Marcus. You were selling your wife's company before asking for a divorce. The directors watched them with a horrified fascination of passengers seeing smoke rise from an engine. Elena laid one hand on the back of an empty chair. The acquisition cannot proceed. Effective at noon, Meridian Logic is suspending the cross-hospitality license, pending an audit for unauthorized access and unpaid royalties. The hotels will retain booking functions, but revenue optimization and expansion tools will be disabled. I have also filed for divorce and requested an injunction preventing Marcus from transferring marital or corporate assets. Marcus stared at her. You cannot shut us down because you're angry. I am not angry enough to shut down hotels and hurt employees. That is why the basic systems will remain. I am, however, finished allowing you to profit from work you call insignificant. One of the independent directors cleared his throat. What would be required to restore the full license? A forensic audit, payment of outstanding royalties, and Marcus's temporary removal from financial authority. You planned this overnight? Celeste asked. Elena thought of the hours spent in the kitchen with Julian, Naomi, and a cybersecurity specialist. She thought of Julian sliding a cup of coffee toward her when her hands began to tremble, never pretending not to notice, and never asking her to stop. No, Elena said. Marcus planned most of it for me. He left a clear trail. I simply stopped looking away. The board voted within 40 minutes. Marcus was placed on administrative leave. The acquisition was suspended. A forensic firm was retained with Elena receiving observer status because her software was at issue. As the meeting ended, Marcus caught Elena near the windows. You embarrassed me in front of my own board. You forged my signature in front of your own board. Celeste and I are going to build something bigger. Julian is only helping you because he wants revenge on her. Once he has it, he will forget your name. Elena looked across the room. Julian was speaking with Naomi, but his attention shifted the moment Marcus moved closer to her. He did not intervene. He waited for Elena to decide whether she needed him. Perhaps, Elena said. But yesterday you forgot my name while you were still married to me. I have already survived worse. She walked away before Marcus could answer. Outside the building, a black car waited. Julian held the rear door, but Elena paused on the sidewalk. Thank you for the evidence, she said. I need to know what you expect in return. Nothing personal. Professionally, I would like to discuss licensing Meridian Logic after the audit on terms you negotiate with independent counsel. And personally? His gaze was steady. Personally, I expect both of us to be too intelligent to confuse shared betrayal with intimacy. The answer surprised her. It also loosened something tight inside her. Good, she said. Julian opened the door wider. For now, I thought you might want breakfast. You have dismantled a fraudulent acquisition before 10:30. That seems worth eggs. Elena smiled despite herself and got into the car. Chapter 3. The forensic audit began with a locked conference room, 6 accountants, and 3 years of invoices Marcus had assumed no one would ever compare. Elena spent the first week separating ordinary incompetence from deliberate theft. She knew every hotel, every vendor, and every seasonal fluctuation. A linen contract in Denver was overpriced but legitimate. A consulting fee in Boston was not. The receiving company shared an address with a fashion studio Celeste had opened under her maiden name. By Friday, the suspicious payments totaled $4 million. Julian worked from the smaller conference room across the hall. Rowan Global had withdrawn from the acquisition, but 2 of its subsidiaries had been used to route Celeste's travel and consulting expenses. His investigators therefore remained involved. He never entered Elena's audit room without knocking, and he never asked to see documents her counsel had not approved. That restraint mattered more than grand gestures would have. Marcus had always entered her office while she was speaking, finished her explanations, and called it teamwork. Julian listened until she reached the end of a thought. When he disagreed, he asked a precise question instead of turning the room into a contest. On the 8th evening, Elena found him alone at a table covered with airport records. His tie was loosened, and an untouched dinner sat beside his laptop. "You missed something," she said. He looked up. "In the records?" "Dinner. I was waiting for you." Naomi said you had not eaten either. Elena placed 2 paper cups of soup on the table. "Then we can both stop being foolish." They ate while rain streaked the dark windows. For 10 minutes they did not discuss spouses, lawyers, or money. Julian told her that he had grown up above his father's small freight office in Newark, and still distrusted any building with a lobby pianist. Elena told him her grandmother had taught her hotel accounting by making her reconcile the receipts from a seaside inn. "So Meridian logic began at an inn?" he asked. "It began because my grandmother hated empty rooms. She said an empty room was food spoiling on a shelf. I wanted a system that could tell her when to lower rates, when to hold them, and what kind of guests would return. Marcus told my board he designed the model after studying European resorts." Elena gave a short laugh. Marcus once thought occupancy rate meant the percentage of rooms with furniture. Julian laughed then, a real sound that changed his whole face. Elena felt an answering warmth and immediately distrusted it. He seemed to understand. We do not have to make every pleasant moment mean something. Do you always know when someone is retreating? Only when I am doing it too. That honesty stayed with her. The next morning, the audit found something worse than hidden consulting fees. Cross Hospitality managed 5 properties owned by the Hopewell Children's Trust, a charity that provided temporary housing for families whose children were receiving long-term medical care. Under the contract, a percentage of hotel profits went into a protected renovation fund. Nearly $2 million was missing. The withdrawals had been approved by Marcus and supported by invoices from Bellwether Design, Celeste's shell company. The invoices described accessible bathrooms, safety railings, and family kitchens that had never been built. Elena stared at photographs of peeling walls and broken elevators. Her grief hardened into something cleaner. "He took money from sick children," she said. Naomi sat beside her. "The signatures are his. We still need to prove he knew the work was fictitious." "He knew." Elena pointed to a digital note attached to one invoice. "This project code is MC Reserve. Marcus used those initials for personal contingency accounts. I challenged one during our 2023 budget review. He told me it was for emergency maintenance." Julian stood at the far end of the table. "Celeste used Bellwether funds to pay the deposit on a villa in Lake Como. The closing statement is among the documents my divorce attorney obtained this morning." Naomi's expression sharpened. "Can we share it with prosecutors?" "Yes." Elena closed the photograph folder. "Not yet. First, We preserve every server and interview the property managers. If Marcus learns what we found, he will blame Celeste and start destroying evidence. Julian nodded once. What do you need? A secure backup environment independent of Cross Hospitality and Rowan Global. I do not want either side accused of altering files. I know a retired federal examiner who runs one. Naomi can engage her so the privilege belongs to you. Elena studied him. You are making sure I control the evidence. It is your case. 3 words. No performance, no demand for gratitude. That afternoon, Marcus appeared at Elena's house with flowers and a photographer waiting across the street. I came to apologize, he announced when she opened the door. Elena saw the camera lens through the hedge. You came to create a photograph of yourself apologizing. His smile faltered. Can we talk inside? No. Celeste exaggerated things. The acquisition pressure got out of control. We both made mistakes. Name mine. He opened his mouth and found nothing useful. Elena took the flowers, set them on the porch, and closed the door. Through the glass, she watched Marcus turn toward the hidden photographer with a wounded expression carefully arranged on his face. 10 minutes later, Julian called. There is already a story online saying Marcus attempted reconciliation, and you refused to hear him. I know, my communications team can respond. No, let him tell everyone I am cold. When the Hopewell records become public, cold will look better than criminal. There was a pause, then quiet approval in Julian's voice. Remind me never to underestimate you. You never have. That is why I answer your calls. Chapter 4. Celeste invited Elena to lunch 2 days later. The message was written as if they were old friends. We are the only 2 people who understand what these men are capable of. Let us settle this like women. Elena accepted because Naomi wanted Celeste talking. She chose a restaurant with security cameras and wore a recording device permitted under state law. Julian waited in a private office nearby, not because Elena needed protection from a conversation, but because Celeste had requested that he bring a financial release. Celeste arrived 20 minutes late in cream cashmere and oversized sunglasses. The emerald ring was gone. You look well, she said after sitting down. Divorce suits you. You asked to settle something. Celeste removed her sunglasses. Fatigue showed beneath the makeup around her eyes. Marcus is under pressure. He says things he does not mean. Such as? He claims the bellwether invoices were my idea. Elena lifted her water glass. Were they? Bellwether is a legitimate design consultancy. Some projects were delayed. That is not fraud. Families at Hopewell have been waiting 3 years for wheelchair-accessible bathrooms. Your villa was not delayed. Celeste's face tightened. Julian told you. Of course he did. He loves collecting damaged things when he can call it rescue. Elena felt anger rise, but kept her voice even. You mistake respect for rescue because you have never offered either. Do you think he respects you? Celeste leaned closer. Julian studies people the way he studies companies. He finds what is undervalued, buys it cheaply, and waits. You are useful because your software can make him hundreds of millions. The accusation reached a fear Elena had not admitted. That was why Celeste had chosen it. Then why are you here? Elena asked. Celeste blinked. If Julian only wants my software and Marcus only wants you, you have won. Yet you asked me to meet you. You removed your wedding ring. You look as though you have not slept. What are you afraid of? For one instant, Celeste's polish cracked. Marcus moved money, she said. He put accounts in my name without explaining the source. Julian has frozen my cards and Marcus's board has frozen his. We need liquidity until the divorces are final. You mean you need me to release the Meridian license so Marcus can complete a sale? You would receive $10 million, more than your company is worth on paper. Sign the assignment, withdraw the fraud claim, and disappear with dignity. Who's $10 million? A private investor's. Your cousin in Singapore? Celeste's fingers stopped against the stem of her glass. Elena continued. The investor who received stolen source documentation. The one whose fund wired Bellwether $600,000 yesterday. You cannot prove I sent anything. You just proved you know what needs proving. Celeste pushed back from the table. You were supposed to be easy. Marcus said you would sign anything if he sounded disappointed enough. The words hurt. Elena allowed herself to feel them, then let them pass. Marcus was right for a long time, she said. That is why he is wrong now. The office door opened. Julian entered with Naomi. Celeste looked from him to Elena and understood. You recorded me. The restaurant did, Naomi said. Its security system captured your offer to pay for withdrawal of a fraud claim. Elena also recorded the conversation lawfully. Celeste stood. Julian, tell them this is enough. I will sign your divorce agreement. You can keep the houses. Julian looked at the woman he had once married. Sadness moved briefly behind his eyes, but it did not weaken him. The houses were never the issue, he said. The Hopewell money was. I did not know those children. That is not a defense. Celeste turned to Elena. And you think he is kind? Watch how easily he destroys someone he once claimed to love. Elena rose. Love does not require protecting someone from the consequences of stealing from children. Celeste left without touching her lunch. Afterward, Elena stood at the window of Julian's nearby office. The city looked gray and distant below. She found the fear I have been avoiding, Elena said. Julian waited. I do not want to become another asset in your portfolio. He came to stand several feet away, leaving space between them. Then do not. Meridian can license to another company, remain independent, or reject every offer. I will give you the security evidence regardless. And us? There is no us that requires a decision today. There are two people who have dinner sometimes and understand why the other checks every locked door twice. Elena looked at him. You notice that? I notice many things. I am learning not to use all of them. She smiled faintly. That may be the most honest description of restraint I have ever heard. Julian reached into his pocket and placed a small brass key on the desk. My mother owns a cottage in Newport. It has a separate office and a view of the water. The press will find your house soon. You may use it alone for as long as you need. No staff, no cameras, no conditions. Elena did not take the key immediately. Why? Because quiet should not be something Marcus gets to take from you. She closed her fingers around the key. That evening, alone at the cottage, Elena listened to the ocean and realized Julian had given her the first gift in years that did not ask her to become smaller in return. Chapter 5. For the next month, Elena rebuilt her life before she tried to define it. She moved Meridian Logic into offices overlooking the harbor and rehired 3 engineers Marcus had dismissed for disagreeing with him. She offered Cross Hospitality a temporary license that protected hotel employees while withholding expansion tools from the executives under investigation. The board accepted every condition. She also filed amended patent protections, created an independent board for Meridian, and placed her grandmother's original notebooks in a secure archive. Each action felt like replacing a brick Marcus had quietly removed from beneath her feet. Julian visited Newport twice a week. Sometimes they discussed the joint pilot Rowan Global wanted to run at 6 resorts. Sometimes they walked along the seawall and spoke about nothing useful. He told Elena about his marriage without making Celeste a monster from the beginning. They had met when both were ambitious and lonely. Celeste had loved the doors his name opened. Julian had loved being admired by someone who seemed fearless. Over time, admiration became entitlement, and work became his excuse not to confront the emptiness between them. I was absent, he said one evening. That did not cause her affair or the theft, but it did make it easier for me to pretend our marriage was merely busy. Elena appreciated that he could admit failure without claiming responsibility for Celeste's choices. Marcus was not always cruel, she said. He believed in my system before anyone else did. Then people started praising him for it, and eventually he believed the praise belonged to him. I kept correcting the work instead of correcting the story. Why? Because every time I asked for credit, he called me insecure. I wanted peace more than recognition. Julian stopped walking. And now, Elena watched waves strike the rocks below. Now I understand peace purchased with silence is only delayed conflict. He did not tell her she was brave. He did not say he had always seen her strength. He simply resumed walking beside her, matching her pace. Their first kiss happened in Meridian's server room, which Elena later thought was painfully appropriate. A storm had knocked out power along the harbor. The backup generators started, then failed. Elena and her chief engineer spent 2 hours protecting the audit archive while Julian arranged portable power units from a nearby Rowan property. When the systems finally stabilized, Elena emerged with dust on her cheek and found Julian waiting in the emergency-lit hallway. "The evidence is safe," she said. "I know. The client servers never went down. I know that too." "Then why are you looking at me like that?" "Because you have been carrying everyone for 6 weeks, and you still think the impressive part is that the servers remained online." He brushed the dust from her cheek. His hand paused, giving her time to move away. Elena did not. She kissed him first. It was not dramatic. There was no music, no audience, and no promise that pain had magically become destiny. It was warm, careful, and real. When they separated, Julian rested his forehead lightly against hers. "We can pretend the emergency lighting caused poor judgment," he said. "It would be our first dishonest agreement. Then I object." She laughed, and the sound surprised them both. 2 days later, Marcus appeared on a business podcast and accused Elena and Julian of engineering a hostile takeover. He described himself as a self-made founder whose former wife had aligned with a billionaire to steal his company after he sought a respectful divorce. The interview spread quickly. Celeste posted a photograph of herself and Marcus on a yacht captioned, "Truth survives jealousy." The yacht had been rented for 40 minutes while docked. Elena's attorneys urged silence until criminal referrals were complete. She agreed, though every lie revived an old instinct to explain herself. At a Meridian staff meeting, one young engineer raised her hand. "Are we going to lose clients because of this?" Elena looked around the room. They deserved more than reassurance. "Some may leave," she said. "We will not buy their loyalty by arguing online. Our contracts are valid. Our work is ours, and an independent audit will establish what happened. Until then, we keep doing excellent work and we document everything." Afterward, Julian found her alone beside the whiteboard. "You wanted to answer him," he said. "I wanted to answer every sentence. Why didn't you?" "Because Marcus is trying to move the argument from evidence to emotion. He knows how to win a performance." Julian placed a folder on the table. "Then perhaps we should choose a stage where evidence wins." Inside was an invitation to the Hopewell Children's Trust annual gala. Cross Hospitality was the presenting sponsor. Marcus was scheduled to receive an award for philanthropic leadership. Elena read the final page. Hopewell's trustees had requested a private briefing about the missing renovation funds. They were prepared to revoke the award during the gala if the evidence was conclusive. "Marcus thinks this event will restore his reputation," she said. Celeste ordered a custom gown. "How do you know?" She charged the deposit to a card she was prohibited from using. "My lawyers receive inventive alerts." Elena closed the folder. "We give Hopewell everything, but the trustees decide what happens at their gala. I will not use sick children as scenery for revenge." Julian's expression softened. "That is why they asked for you." She looked down at the invitation. "Marcus once told me public memory lasts only until the next party. He may be right." Elena met Julian's eyes. "Then let us make sure the next party is memorable." Chapter 6. The Hopewell Gala occupied the grand ballroom of the Ashford Hotel, one of the properties Cross Hospitality managed for the trust. Gold banners displayed photographs of children who had stayed there during treatment. At the center of each table stood a card describing the renovation that donations were supposed to fund. Marcus arrived with Celeste on his arm. He wore the tuxedo Elena had selected for him 2 years earlier. Celeste wore a white gown with a train long enough to suggest she had confused charity with coronation. Cameras flashed as they stepped onto the carpet. "Tonight is about the families," Marcus told a reporter. "Personal attacks cannot distract us from service." Inside, he searched the room until he found Elena. She stood near the trustees in a black silk dress, speaking with the mother of a child who used a wheelchair. Julian was beside her, but he was listening rather than commanding the circle. When Elena laughed at something the child said, Julian's gaze rested on her with unguarded affection. Marcus's hand tightened around Celeste's waist. "She brought him," he muttered. "Of course she did," Celeste said. "She wants people to think she traded up." The possibility that Elena had not needed to trade anyone for anyone seemed not to occur to either of them. An hour before the award presentation, the Hopewell trustees met privately, with Elena, Julian, Naomi, the forensic examiner, and 2 federal investigators. The evidence filled 4 binders. Elena explained the payment path. Cross Hospitality had certified that renovations were complete. Hopewell released restricted funds. Marcus approved invoices to Bellwether Design. Bellwether sent money to companies tied to Celeste and her cousin. Those companies paid for travel, jewelry, the Lake Como Villa deposit, and an account Marcusons intended to use after the acquisition. "Could any of this be an accounting error?" asked Dr. Lillian Shaw, Hopewell's chairwoman. The examiner shook her head. "We found altered inspection photographs. Images from unrelated hotels were relabeled as Hopewell rooms. The edits came from Ms. Rowan's laptop. Mr. Cross emailed her the required room numbers." One of the investigators spoke. "We have enough to execute search warrants tomorrow morning. We would prefer the subjects not know that tonight." Dr. Shaw looked at Elena. "Marcus is scheduled to receive our leadership award in 40 minutes. We can cancel quietly." Elena thought of the podcast interview, the staged flowers, and the years Marcus had used her silence as a polished surface for his lies. Then she looked at the photographs on the wall: narrow doors, broken lifts, exhausted parents carrying children upstairs. "Do not reveal anything that could compromise the investigation," she said. "But Hopewell should correct the public record. Donors deserve to know why their money did not reach these families." Dr. Shaw nodded. "Then we will correct it." In the ballroom, Marcus took his place near the stage. Celeste sat beside him, angling her emerald earrings toward the photographers. She had acquired them with Bellwether money 3 weeks after Hopewell paid for non-existent safety railings. The lights dimmed. Dr. Shaw approached the microphone. "Tonight we plan to honor a business leader whose company managed Hopewell House. Instead, we owe our families an apology." A murmur passed through the room. Marcus's smile froze. "An independent audit has found that $2 million in restricted renovation funds did not reach Hopewell House. Documentation provided to our trustees was falsified. We have referred the matter to law enforcement and terminated Cross Hospitality's management contract effective tonight." The screen behind her displayed 2 photographs side by side. One was the room Cross Hospitality claimed to have renovated. The other was the actual Hopewell bathroom, its doorway too narrow for a wheelchair. "There will be no leadership award," Dr. Shaw continued. "There will, however, be accountability." The ballroom erupted in whispers. Reporters stood. Marcus rose so abruptly his chair struck the floor. "This is false," he called. "A vindictive former employee manipulated those records." His gaze locked on Elena. Dr. Shaw did not step away the microphone. "Elena Cross was never employed by Hopewell. She identified the discrepancy and donated the forensic work that confirmed it. Meridian Logic and Rowan Global have jointly guaranteed the missing renovation budget, so construction can begin Monday." Applause began near the family tables and spread across the room. Marcus pushed through the aisle toward Elena. "You did this." Julian shifted one step, but Elena touched his sleeve. He stopped. "You approved the invoices," Elena said. "Because Celeste told me the work was complete. She handled Bellwether." Celeste stood behind him, white with fury. "Do not put this on me. You created the reserve account. You said charities never examine contractor details." Every nearby phone turned toward them. Marcus spun around. "Lower your voice. You promised the acquisition would cover everything before the audit. You forged Elena's assignment because you said she never read legal documents." The silence around them became electric. Marcus grabbed Celeste's arm. "Stop talking." Julian's voice cut through the room. "Release her." Security guards moved in. Marcus let go, but the damage was already complete. Celeste had admitted knowledge of the scheme in front of trustees, lawyers, reporters, and hundreds of guests. She seemed to realize it at the same moment. Her face crumpled. "He made me do it," she said, pointing at Marcus. "He said Elena had hidden money for years, and this was only taking back what belonged to him." "You bought a villa," Marcus shouted. "You sent the software to your cousin, because you were going to leave me with nothing the second the sale closed." The two people who had described their affair as brave and liberating now stood beneath a charity banner, exposing each other in fragments. Elena felt no triumph in their panic. The satisfaction came from seeing the parents at the nearest table realized the renovations would finally happen. Dr. Shaw asked security to escort Marcus and Celeste out. As Marcus passed Elena, he leaned close. "You think Rowan loves you? He is buying your gratitude with a donation." Elena looked at Julian. He had offered the full $2 million himself. She had insisted Meridian pay half because the recovery belonged to both companies and because partnership mattered more than rescue. "No," she told Marcus. "He is matching my commitment. That is something you never learn to do." Marcus was taken through the service exit. Celeste followed separately, holding up the hem of her white gown while reporters shouted questions about stolen charity money. The band did not resume. Instead, Dr. Shaw invited families to speak about the building they needed. Guests pledged another $3 million in 20 minutes. Later, on a quiet balcony above the ballroom, Julian handed Elena a glass of water. "You were right," she said. "Evidence won. You won before tonight. This only made it visible." She leaned against the railing. "Marcus will say we humiliated him. He humiliated himself. You opened a ledger." Elena turned toward him. "When this is over, I do not want our life to be built around what they did. Neither do I. I want ordinary mornings, work we can argue about without punishing each other, rooms where silence is comfortable." Julian took her hand. "That sounds more valuable than anything I own." Chapter 7. At 7 the next morning, federal agents searched Marcus's penthouse, Celeste's studio, and the Cross Hospitality executive offices. Marcus called Elena 13 times before his attorney stopped him. His messages moved from outrage to pleading. "You know I would never hurt children." Celeste handed the invoices. "Tell them I made a mistake, and we can fix this privately. Remember who believed in you first." Elena forwarded every message to Naomi without replying. Celeste chose a different strategy. Within 48 hours, she offered prosecutors access to her cloud accounts in exchange for consideration. The accounts contained voice recordings of Marcus discussing the false invoices, copies of his forged assignment, and messages instructing Celeste to move money before the acquisition. Marcus retaliated by proof that Celeste had created Bellwether, altered photographs, bribed a contractor to sign completion certificates, and sent Meridian files overseas. Each had kept evidence against the other as insurance. Together, they built the prosecution's case faster than any investigator could have hoped. The Cross Hospitality Board fired Marcus for cause. Without Meridian's advanced license and the Hopewell contract, the company's value fell sharply. Several directors asked Elena to return as chief executive. She declined. "I spent years repairing a structure built around Marcus's ego," she told them. "I am building something that does not require repair." Meridian purchased the company's data services division in a court-supervised sale, preserving 87 jobs. The hotel operations were acquired by another group. Marcus's shares were frozen pending restitution claims, and the waterfront penthouse he had bought with marital funds was placed under lien. Celeste Slate Como purchase collapsed when authorities froze the deposit. Her fashion studio closed. The society magazines that once photographed every charity luncheon removed her from their committees. More important, Hopewell sued her personally for the stolen funds. Neither consequence satisfied Elena as much as the first construction photograph from Hopewell House. It showed workers widening the bathroom door. Her divorce from Marcus was finalized 5 months after the gala. The hearing took less than an hour. Marcus looked smaller at the courthouse than he had in the ballroom. He had lost weight, and the expensive suit hung from his shoulders. Because his criminal trial was pending, his attorney did most of the speaking. Elena received the grandmother's house, full ownership of Meridian Logic, repayment for unpaid royalties, and a substantial share of the remaining marital assets. Marcus waived any claim to future software revenue. When the judge declared the marriage dissolved, Marcus asked for 1 minute alone with Elena in the hallway. Naomi objected, but Elena agreed as long as a court officer remained nearby. "I know you hate me," Marcus said. "I do not." The answer unsettled him more than anger would have. "Then help me. Tell prosecutors I never understood where the Hopewell money came from. They will listen to you. You emailed Celeste the room numbers. You signed the invoices. You tried to sell my work using a forged signature. Which part did you not understand?" He rubbed a hand over his face. "I understood the transactions. I did not understand that one mistake would erase my whole life. It was not one mistake. It was a series of decisions you expected other people to pay for. Celeste pushed me. She made everything feel urgent. You left me because she made you feel alive. Now you want me to save you because she made you feel reckless. At what point are your choices yours?" Marcus had no answer. He looked past Elena to where Julian waited at the end of the corridor. Julian was speaking with one of Hopewell's attorneys, giving Elena privacy without leaving her unsupported. "Is he waiting to celebrate?" Marcus asked bitterly. "He is waiting because we are having lunch. The divorce is a legal appointment, not a holiday. You really chose him." Elena considered the words. "No. First I chose myself. That is why I was able to choose someone who knows the difference." She walked away. Outside, Julian did not ask what Marcus had said. He handed Elena the keys to the car and moved toward the passenger side. "You want me to drive?" she asked. "You said last week that I break like a nervous grandfather." "You do. Then today, I am demonstrating growth." They ate lunch at a small harbor restaurant where no one recognized them. Julian ordered cake, but he did not call it divorce cake. He said Meridian's latest resort pilot had exceeded revenue forecasts by 18%, which was a legitimate reason for frosting. Halfway through dessert, Elena reached across the table and took his hand. "Thank you for not making today about winning me." Julian turned her palm upward and traced his thumb across it. "You were never a prize in a contest with Marcus." Celeste said, "You collect undervalued things. You are not undervalued anymore. Your licensing fees have become alarming." Elena laughed. "That is your answer?" His expression became serious. "My answer is that I loved you before the gala. I love you now. I will love you whether Meridian signs a contract with Rowan Global or terminates every agreement tomorrow." I have delayed saying it because I did not want love to sound like another deadline. Emotion tightened Elena's throat. Marcus had said I love you whenever he wanted forgiveness, agreement, or applause. Julian said it as information she was free to receive. "I love you too," she said, "and I am keeping the licensing fees. I expected nothing less." Chapter 8. The criminal trial began the following spring. Marcus and Celeste had initially planned separate defenses, each blaming the other. After prosecutors added conspiracy, wire fraud, theft from a federally supported charity, and attempted theft of trade secrets, their attorneys pursued plea negotiations. Celeste accepted first. She pleaded guilty to conspiracy and wire fraud, agreed to return jewelry and foreign assets, and testified about Marcus's role. She expected probation because of her cooperation. The judge disagreed. At sentencing, 3 Hopewell parents described carrying children upstairs while renovation funds paid for Celeste's vacations. One father held up a photograph of his daughter, waiting outside a bathroom she could not enter. Cooperation after discovery does not erase deliberate cruelty before discovery, the judge said. Celeste received 14 months in federal prison, 3 years of supervised release, and personal restitution obligations that would survive bankruptcy. Marcus held out until the week before trial. Then the government introduced the recording Celeste had made in the Lake Como villa. On it, Marcus laughed about Elena's trust. She signs where I mark. She wants to believe marriage means I would never use her name against her. The recording was played during a public pretrial hearing. His remaining allies disappeared by sunset. Marcus pleaded guilty to conspiracy, wire fraud, aggravated identity theft connected to Elena's electronic signature, and theft of protected funds. Because he had directed the scheme and attempted to obstruct the audit, he received 42 months in federal prison. Before sentencing, he asked Elena to write a letter describing his early support of Meridian. She refused. She did submit a victim statement, but it contained no insults. Marcus did not steal only money, she wrote. He relied on the belief that quiet people will absorb harm to preserve appearances. A sentence cannot return the years in which I doubted my own judgment. It can, however, establish that trust is not permission, marriage is not ownership, and charity is not a private account. The judge quoted the final sentence from the bench. When officers led Marcus away, he looked back at Elena. She felt grief for the young man who had once sat with her at her grandmother's kitchen table and believed her idea could change an industry. That man had not vanished in one terrible moment. He had been surrendered, choice by choice, for praise, entitlement, and easy money. Elena allowed herself to mourn him without confusing grief with mercy. Outside the courthouse, reporters crowded the steps. Julian stood beside Elena, but the microphones pointed toward her. "Mrs. Cross, do you feel vindicated?" "My name is Elena Hale again," she said, using her grandmother's surname. "And I feel relieved that Hopewell families received justice. Did your relationship with Julian Rowan begin as revenge against your former spouses?" Elena glanced at Julian. A smile touched his eyes. "Revenge can introduce 2 people," she said. "It cannot teach them how to stay. We did that ourselves." They left without answering more questions. That summer, Hopewell House reopened. Every floor had accessible bathrooms, family kitchens, quiet study rooms, and a rooftop garden. Meridian created a free scheduling system that coordinated rooms with hospital appointments. Rowan Global funded an endowment for maintenance, structured so no donor or executive could redirect it. At the opening ceremony, Dr. Shaw asked Elena to cut the ribbon. She invited the girl from the gala photograph to hold the scissors with her. After the crowd moved inside, Julian led Elena to the rooftop garden. The city spread beyond the flowers, bright in the late afternoon. "I have something that requires careful disclosure," he said. Elena raised an eyebrow. "That is an alarming opening from a man who acquires companies. No acquisition, no merger, definitely no hostile action." He took a small box from his jacket, but did not kneel immediately. "Before I open this, I need you to know that there is no schedule attached. You can say no, later or never. Nothing about our home, our work, or the way I love you changes because of an answer." Lena looked at the man who had entered her bedroom on the worst night of her marriage and brought evidence instead of promises. He had stood beside in boardrooms and behind her when the decision needed to be hers. He knew she checked locked doors twice, preferred coffee too strong, and became silent when she was thinking rather than angry. He understood that support was not the same as control. "Julian," she said softly, "open the box." Inside lay a ring unlike Celeste's enormous emerald. It held a clear oval diamond in a simple platinum setting with a tiny blue stone hidden beneath it. The blue stone came from one of my mother's rings, he said. She said a new marriage should carry something old only if the old thing was kind. Then he knelt. Elena Hale, will you build those ordinary mornings with me? Tears reached her eyes. This time, she did not mistake them for weakness or give anyone the power to demand them. Yes, she said, but I am not changing my name. Julian smiled. I would have been disappointed if you did. He slid the ring onto her finger. Chapter 9. Their wedding took place 6 months later at Elena's grandmother's seaside inn. There were no magazine exclusives, no ballroom sponsors, and no business announcements. The guest list included Meridian's employees, Hopewell families, Julian's mother, Naomi, Dr. Shaw, and the hotel staff who had known Elena before anyone called her software valuable. Elena walked down the garden path alone, not because no one could give her away, but because she belonged to herself when she arrived. Julian waited beneath an arbor facing the water. When he saw her, his composure broke into the same open smile she had first glimpsed over paper cups of soup. Their vows were brief. Julian promised to listen to the end of her sentences, to ask before helping, and to protect the quiet they created together. Elena promised honesty even when peace seemed easier, partnership without disappearance, and love that did not require either of them to become smaller. At the reception, the Hopewell girl who had cut the ribbon danced between them. Julian's mother complained cheerfully about the lobby pianist, even though the inn did not have one. Elena's engineers presented the couple with a framed copy of Meridian's first clean system report after the storm. Near sunset, Elena stepped onto the porch alone for a moment. Her wedding ring caught the light beside the engagement ring. 2 years earlier, she had believed endurance was proof of love. She had measured her worth by how much conflict she could prevent, how many errors she could quietly repair, and how little credit she needed. Marcus had not created that belief, but he had profited from it. Leaving him had not transformed her overnight. Julian's love had not repaired her like a damaged object. The real change had come through dozens of decisions: opening the envelope, stopping the sale, claiming her work, telling the truth, accepting help without surrendering authority, and allowing tenderness to exist without debt. Julian joined her on the porch and offered a plate of cake. You vanished from your own reception, he said. I was thinking. I know. I brought provisions. She took the plate. Do you regret marrying a woman with alarming licensing fees? Constantly. Rowan Global's margins have never recovered. Elena smiled and leaned against him. In the distance, waves folded onto the shore with patient certainty. The inn's windows glowed behind them, full of people who knew exactly whose work had built Meridian and exactly whose courage had exposed the theft. Marcus and Celeste had once believed Elena's silence meant there would be no consequence. They had mistaken restraint for surrender, loyalty for blindness, and kindness for an empty account they could keep withdrawing from. They were wrong. Elena had not needed to become cruel to defeat them. She had only needed to stop protecting them from the truth. Julian touched the ring on her finger. Ordinary enough? She looked back at the music, the crowded tables, and the life waiting beyond one beautiful day. Not yet, she said, but tomorrow morning has promise. Subscribe to her new Peak for more stories about quiet women, hidden power, true love, and the moment betrayal meets consequences. I want immunity. In exchange, I give you everything: the Singapore transfers, the Lake Como closing statement, recordings of Marcus discussing the Hopewell invoices. He knew every dollar was fictitious. He called it harmless paperwork for a good cause gone slightly sideways. You're offering to destroy him. I'm offering to survive him, Celeste corrected. Julian will take everything I have the moment the divorce finalizes. You're the only person left who can decide what happens to me. Elena studied the woman across from her, no longer glittering, just tired. I'm not deciding your fate, Celeste. The prosecutors will. But I'll tell them you cooperated first. Celeste's hand trembled around her water glass. That's more mercy than I gave you. I know. 3 weeks later, the Hopewell fraud became public. Marcus was indicted on wire fraud and charity theft charges the same week. Cross Hospitality's board removed him permanently and reinstated Elena as majority stakeholder of the forecasting platform under a new licensing structure, one that made her, not the company, its sole owner. Celeste testified under a cooperation agreement and received probation. Her marriage to Julian was dissolved quietly, without cameras. Marcus called Elena once, from a number she didn't recognize, the week before his arraignment. You destroyed me, he said. You handed me the tools, Elena replied. I only stopped looking away. She hung up before he could say anything else. It was the last conversation they ever had. 9 months later, Elena stood at the podium of the Meridian Logic Annual Summit. The company that had once been a system built at her grandmother's kitchen table, now employing 400 people and licensing its forecasting engine to 4 hospitality groups, including, ironically, a newly restructured Rowan Global, run not by Julian, but by an independent board he'd insisted on installing. I used to think success meant being indispensable to someone else's story, she told the room. I've learned it means being the author of your own. Afterward, Julian found her by the window, 2 glasses of champagne in hand. He'd stepped back from Rowan Global's daily operations months ago. Not for her, he'd said, though she suspected otherwise, and now consulted quietly from the sidelines of businesses he found interesting. Your grandmother would have liked this room, he said. No empty seats. She'd have asked why the wine list is so expensive. Fair point. He handed her a glass. Any regrets? Elena looked out at the city lights, at the version of her life she'd almost let someone else finish writing. Only that it took someone folding suits with more care than he'd folded me to notice I was already gone. Julian raised his glass. To noticing. To noticing, she echoed, and for the first time in 11 years, the toast felt entirely her own.